We got one more of our farmer panel participants on the way, but we're going to get started here. So thanks for coming back to the second session. I think we've got a good program here today. This should be pretty interesting with the panel and everything. The theme kind of has been climate and weather, and how our systems can adapt and how they respond to these strange weather times. So we've got Eric Hunt talking about the climate outlook. We've got our farmer panels talking about what they've tried and how it's worked. And then we have Katja Kohler-Cole here talking about rye cover crops and how it grows in the fall. So that's kind of the theme today. And again, I'll acknowledge my co-conspirators, Nathan Mueller and Aaron Nygren are here, and Jeannie Reese is out there streaming. They've really helped me put this together. And we have Tyler Williams here today, the founder of Successful Farmer Series. He's now with Bayer, Sustainable Systems Agronomist, and they're our sponsor today for today's meeting. So we really appreciate Tyler being here. And if you remember Tyler from his time here in Lancaster, go find him and catch up with him. So we'll get started with the panel here. Aaron Studebaker is going to lead us off. You can come up too, Trent. And they've all got a few slides. We'll let them give their little presentation, and then we'll open it up and we'll just have some discussion here. So, Aaron, it's all you.
Hi, my name's Aaron Studebaker. A little bit about myself. Former Husker alumni. I used to wrestle for Nebraska for 5 years. I'm a farmer rancher just from north of Lincoln. Been doing cover crops for 15 plus years. I've only been in it for about 7 or 8. My dad started it long before I did. We do a corn soybean rotation, not irrigated. We also do a sizable cow-calf operation to kind of balance out what we do on our day-to-day operation. Extensive rye cover crop trial and knowledge. That's basically most of what I have done personally. I know there's lots of different species variety. I have minimal experience on that. This was our first year experimenting with wheat. We've just extensively done a lot of rye stuff, especially because we're trying to eliminate our number of passes we're doing with chemicals. We've essentially cut our passes in half, or almost to as minimal as possible with the type of stuff that we do. Rye cover crop. So just a little bit on what we're doing. So we plant with our air seeder or air cover one. I'll go into explanation of what that is. That's something I kind of invented, put together, created. This was our first year running it, so brand new into something that we do. Usually using more than 60 pounds for weed control. We planting our soybeans green into our cover crop. Corn doesn't really work because of the antagonism there. Termination of the crop at about round T2 Roundup with no residual, and then we come up in with our second pass with a residual termination pass if needed. There's been 1 year we've gotten away with just spraying one pass of Roundup. That's not normal, but we have done it before. So T2, so that's kind of just a good explanation of what the rye looks like. It's about knee high. Sometimes you get a little crazier. Once you start to get into boot stage, you start to see yield loss. We've extensively shown that. The other thing that you guys will see is anywhere from T1 to T2, you'll see a lag. The crop takes a little while to get off and get going, but generally, if you there's only been 1 year where we've actually been inverse, but if you start seeing your rain get shut off later months of the year, this program is really, really effective. Keeps your moisture in your ground, soil profile, organic matter. We've pushed an entire point. That's an extra 4 inches of rain we can hold in our soil compared to people that are than where we were before, essentially. Most of that, or almost all of that, has been extensively through using rye as our cover crop. A couple of pictures of our actual operation. So you can see here, corn planter. We terminated 5 to 7 days before planting, came in here, planting right in between RTK, between the rows. Bean planter, you can see kind of what stage it is. This actually got terminated before our planter was able to get here. It was starting to get a little bit too tall, got a little late in the season. We had a good 2 or 3 week stretch of rain, came and terminated it and planted it essentially a day or two later. This is something we do on our cow-calf side. If you see there's a silage truck in the back, but we're swathing it. Choppers coming in, chopping it and getting put off. The other thing you guys can't see in this picture is there's soybeans planted in this field. So the soybeans are just a little bit tall. Okay, they're just emerged out of the ground. Cotyledon's just starting to open up. We have found, we do a couple hundred acres where we chop the rye for feed for our cows, so we can feed them all year long. But by getting the crop in there and planting it at that stage, and then coming in and chopping it later, we get a 10 bushel bump generally over the top of versus chopping it and then coming in and planting it. Just kind of has to do with daylight, solstice, that whole system there. Spreading versus planting. I've done quite a bit of spreading plant trials. We're all non-irrigated, so spreading does not work very well for us, especially since we don't have our own spreading machine. If we had our own spreader, I could go in, time the rain events, go in there day or two before, knock it all out. The other thing I will note about spreading, so with spreading, there is a green up lag in the spring. So spreaded cover crops take an extra week or two to green up and get going in the spring. They don't have the root system established quite like they do when they're seeded or planted. The NRCS, it's with On Farm Research and UNL. They brought their high boy Haggie out. They come in through the standing corn crop, drop tubes, they lay the seed out. Last year was a little bit rough for the fact that we had no moisture in the fall. Rain event was not timed very well, so that did not work. However, an interesting fact that I learned is that seed put on top will overwinter, and then if you get a rain event, come in like June or July, it will take off. So I had a very interesting spot. It just happened to get missed by the sprayer and the planter. It was just a little 1 acre square, and I had these massive turnips and radishes that could only have showed up from that high boy the year before. So the other thing about that with spreading, you need more cover crop to get the same effectiveness as you do if you air seed or plant it. So essentially there's kind of a trade-off between application cost versus price of seed there. There's a correlation effect. Planting, I've done some trials, 50, 70, 140 pounds. Basically anything below 60, you start to not get the weed control stuff you need. If you're just looking for erosion, you get away with a lot less than what we do. The reason we stay kind of high in the rates is for the weed control that we're looking for. Wheat versus rye, I've kind of touched on that. We're trying wheat this year to work on the antagonism effect between corn and rye that they have with that toxin there. Oh, one too far. This is Air Cover 1. We finally just named it last week. This is something that we custom built ourselves. The only thing that is, the row units are bought and the Montag machine is bought. The rest of it is custom built. The bar's built, all the hoses are run, everything like that. So it is a Nutrient Pro 4000 row unit with a Montag dry fertilizer bend. So we are essentially putting P, K, S, and Z and cover crop, blending it in tube, and then sending it down the row unit and basically air seeding our fertilizer and cover crop. Essentially saving us $10 an acre, not paying the co-op to come out and dry spread our fertilizer. We're also able to take half our row units off, so there's 36 row units. We can take half of them off, go to 30-inch rows versus 15. And then we RTK our corn crop right over top of those nutrients as well. So that's brand new this year. I'm hoping to see how that's going to work. You can see some in that picture. It's kind of hard to see. Let's see if I can point to it. Right there, there's just some wheat growing. You can see a little bit here just from the picture. Oh, this isn't me. This is somebody else. So yeah, this is the last of what I got. Just a little bit about me, what we do, and the things that I know. I was confused. It wasn't my slide.
It's going to be tough to follow up, so I don't have quite as organized a presentation. That's why I made some notes. Sorry about that. I'm Trent Bohling from Johnson, Nebraska. Have a wife and 2 kids and one on the way down to Johnson. She is an ag teacher, so we stay pretty busy. Go over? Okay. I'm a grain broker by day as well and farm and play with cows on the side on the weekends. So a little bit about our operation, smaller family farm, own about 400 acres, manage a little bit of rented pasture and stuff like that as well. 70 to 80 pairs generally a year is kind of our mainstay. We used to be a dairy farm way back in the day, got out in 2001, so a lot of the infrastructure that we use on our farm is from that dairy side of things. We rotationally graze the cattle, really trying to get more aggressive on that in a corn, soybean, wheat, rye. I'll try anything once, and I'll get into that a little bit as well. We even have 3 acres of pumpkins that we sell on a farm stand, stuff like that. So just kind of stay very diverse. Get into some pictures here. Trying some gamma grass. Have a 45-acre field that is also in perennial wheat, a fairly new product that I know UNL has some research on called Kernza is a variety brand of it. So our pastures, like I said, 70 to 80 pair, run predominantly fescue and some native range pasture, but pretty high management, only about 130 acres of pasture to run that livestock. So we do that through stuff like this of wheat and rye works on the rotation that we can get a cover crop in. My overarching goal is we have 60 to 80 acre tracts, 4 of them that kind of lay out perfectly, and I guess a long-term goal and why I'm trying to do this is to get into a corn, bean, wheat cover, and then a permanent pasture rotation, 4-year rotation of that, of where farm ground is actually being worked into a pasture rotation. So here's a quick picture of, these aren't mine cows, but they look the same. Is it farther in? Oh, no, you're fine. So a couple pictures that I had. One was a new Kernza seeding. We seeded that October 1st of this year after short season corn. So the corn crop this year was managed for the Kernza planting. It was 104-day corn. We did get a little bit of rain, and I was not expecting maybe the July rains that we had. We only had about 140 pounds in on that corn, on that short season corn, and it still did about 170. So, and 170 is good on our farm ground. You know, we're not shooting for 220, 230. So we got that out last couple days of September and followed it right back in, no-till drill with Kernza in. Oh, perfect. Okay. Yeah, we'll go through that. I guess I'll just go in order of the pictures that maybe you do have of with Nathan and the Weather Ready Farms team. Gary Lesswing was my local extension agent. Worked with him a lot on some projects. That first picture is a Cobat water that we installed through that Weather Ready Farms program. And to keep the Weather Ready Farms theme going and the climate theme of started learning and grazing that water's the main infrastructure to manage cattle, in my opinion. These waters do not require any electricity in the event of a power outage in the middle of winter. The most ice I've ever had on one of these is about 1 inch, and you can just break through that in the morning, and they're good all day. So that's one project that Nathan and others have helped kind of think about, and we've installed a couple of these and plan to do some more out in the pastures and stuff. There was a picture of the gamma grass. We can, if anybody has questions on that, we can talk about that as well. But I got about 15 acres of that, and it's a tough grass to establish and manage, especially as a hay crop. I usually hire a lot of the hay harvest. They do not like harvesting gamma grass. It's 3 years old, this stand, and some of those clumps are already over 3 foot around. The full rate stand of gamma grass, that you want more than this, but they said don't interseed any. I have some places that are 1 plant per square yard, and that is a seeding rate, or that is an established rate that they feel is acceptable. So with that, this 15 acres really hits a time when my fescue and native is starting to decline. They're that mid-late July. I was running probably 30 pairs on this 15 acres in rotation, moving them every day for, up until the end of August was 1 rotation, and there was plenty of regrowth. So it's a super growth grass, up to 8 tons an acre if managed correctly. So it's just hard to manage. The other pictures there's some pictures of my son standing in the gamma grass. I took that off Snapchat. I don't really use Snapchat anymore, but I take a lot of pictures on it because it pops up in memories, and it's really fun to see. Like, you're just scrolling through your phone someday and you have something pop up from 5 years ago. I got a lot of pictures of dung beetles on my phone. so if some other country's watching my Snapchat and stuff, they're gonna be very disappointed. But it's just fun to see pasture growth throughout the years, and that's how I know that some of this intensive management grazing is working, because I can go back 5 years and see a picture of a landmark out in a pasture and really see some changes. So that's why I make notes to myself and things like that. But seeing cows get lost in gamma grass, that is a challenge with daily moves and fences. Is you almost have to make paths for them to find the fence so they don't walk through it. It just gets so tall and very high quality. And then the last couple slides show we started working wheat and rye into a rotation. Probably not for the wheat or rye as a grain crop, but as a place of cover. After the wheat, we go in with this year it was a 18-way mix, a cover crop. With all my weeds, it turned out to be about a 24-way mix. So cows eat weeds too. We got about an inch of rain on it is all, and it came up and it didn't get quite the growth I wanted, but we started to wean calves on that. We'll bring them into a pen for 3 days, turn them out on the cover crops, and move a fence anywhere from 1 to 3-day moves. Sickness and herd health. I mean, sickness is 0. Herd health has dramatically improved. I haven't treated dust pneumonia or any of that since I started doing this. You still gotta. I haven't been gutsy enough to try the fence line weaning method of this out in the cover crops. We still do, hard wean 3-4 days in a pen with grass hay. But as soon as they are done with mama and get them out on turnips, and we've had great health success with that. And probably not, the 2.5, 3+ pound gains that some like to see on weaned calves, but I'll take 2 pounds on, essentially cheap free feeds. So it's worked really well for us. So that's a brief introduction. I did mention my dad still farms as well. This is all mostly his own ground that I try to manage, but he's involved in the operation, and we cover every acre with rye, and that's kind of what he likes to do. I think he won't admit it, but it's nice that I have a full-time job too. But after the combine rolls off, he gets every acre covered with rye, and then in the spring we make management decisions on whether we're going to keep some of that for combine, calve out on it, stuff like that. So that's my brief introduction. You can think of questions while the next goes.
Yeah, so we've got our last, you can come up, Brian. We got one more talk, and then then we'll open it up and have some discussion.
Good morning. My name is Brhel, and I farm just west of town here between Pleasantdale and Denton. And so this first slide, we're just going to talk about resilience. I know that was one of the themes, and maybe some erosion and those kind of systems that maybe prevent some erosion and build soil health and hopefully build some profit. So first, top button there? Yeah, all right. So the first, the set of slides I have really focuses, the first few slides focus on one field. And so we're just going to kind of go through history and how I managed that one place. So before this was planted, this is just a sorghum sedan. Let me start with what I do. So I farm, I have some conventional crops, I also raise seed crops and cover crop seeds, and then I also have a cow-calf operation. So that kind of gives you some background where I'm coming from. So a very untraditional thing I did before this was plant hairy vetch for seed, and so I'm following up the seed crop with sorghum sedan. Clearly, it's a legume, and so there's plenty of nitrogen to go around. So obviously, there wouldn't be any commercial fertility on this farm. I planted it thick, so I had good forage quality, and just raising a crop, so I had something for cows, so I didn't have to start the tractor, because I don't like starting the tractor if I don't have to. So here is the cows on that crop. You can see sometimes this got rather mature. A lot of seed heads, and I wouldn't recommend that necessarily. You have to plan for that on your next crop, because especially with the dry springs we've had, the herbicides don't work very well. So this is not ideal in that sense, but I had fantastic feed for the cows, and they were fat and sassy, and they were happy. So that makes me happy. So I spoke about the hairy vetch prior to this crop, and I just wanted to showcase that on the ground. You can see a green area on the ground here. That's just volunteer. So with hairy vetch, you're always going to have volunteer. That's just part of it. You just plan for it and actually use it to your advantage. So what I have now is a dry matter in winter, and this is November, December. This is beautiful green. Who wouldn't want that? Makes me hungry, looking at it. So there's a lot of good feed there for a cow guy. All right, and so now we're getting into the deep freeze that we all experienced the end of January. Mama cows still have their calves on them. The end of January, earning their keep. So I really try to focus on crops that can bring value with grazing and keep them in condition, and then add value for the next year. So we'll keep going and see how that plays out. Let's see, is there anything else? Oh, I did want to mention the snow, of course, got a little harder as time went on that spring or that winter. So I did supplement a little alfalfa hay after a few days of this. I don't want to force them too much. I'm a bit of a softie sometimes. But, all right, now we're going to go to a different field. This is peas and oats. I really like having options, and you mentioned having options with the rye, and I just really want to bring that point home, because with peas and oats, this isn't anything new. This is something that guys had done a long time ago. I have options for a seed crop, for harvesting it for seed, and I separate the seeds out. Forage crop, and then also just creating nutrient availability for the following crop. In this particular case, this will be used as grazing. So this is this is a stalker herd that I had on that particular mix. That's just a few days later. They did very well. I don't know what their gain was. Usually when I'm weighing them up, usually it's 1.5 to 2 1/4, somewhere in there. Again, I'm not after high gains. That's not where life is at. This is reality, 1.5 to 2 pounds a day. So they did very well. This is the litter that was left after the grazing event. I want litter on the ground. I'm planning to take 50% and leave 50%. This is where I can really get some value later on in the year when it turns hot. You know, this is in the, I want to say, end of May, beginning of June time frame. So it's going to start getting warm, and this really keeps the soil cool. So on the same field, this is the next summer, I went to a perennial crop. So it was mentioned a pasture phase. This is what I'm doing in my pasture phase. So this is only 15 acres. It's not a huge piece, but it is close to home, and I'm adding value when I can wean calves and do those things. So what I did, I planted in the spring alfalfa, orchard grass mix primarily, and then I added 3 other types of cool season grasses, some broadleaves, and some forbs like small burnet and plantain. But then I also overseeded all that with 70 pounds of oats, 60 pounds of oats. I don't like to go any thicker than a couple bushel, but I definitely can do a couple bushel and still get good growth underneath. So it acted as my nurse crop. I ended up taking it for seed. You can see the green underneath. So that was 55 bushel oats with no inputs, and I had started off my perennial phase. At that point in the summer, it just turned scorching hot. And so everything under there just melted. Mostly still alive, some died, but mostly alive. But the oats did get it started in a dry spring, and I was really happy with that. Right now I have a fantastic stand of alfalfa. It was 10 pounds of alfalfa and some grasses, and the grasses are starting to come in. This next year will be a telling year to see how that all worked. Still, I'm not disappointed in that at all. And then, of course, I grazed this after I harvested, just light graze, and prayed for rain. So the peas and oats, I don't think this is anything new, but it's just encouraging the mycorrhizal fungi piece with the oats. Oats are very mycorrhizal. And then also with building end for the next crop with the pea and the roots from the peas. You can see the nodulation on the peas. And these peas are only maybe 10 inches tall, so it's not, they have some growth, but they've been able to do that type of work within that time frame. So really happy with that. I got to listen to Dr. Randy Anderson from South Dakota, and he was talking about the benefits of peas prior to a corn crop and how it's just a winner every time. And I thought, how can I incorporate this? There's always a yield bump in corn or other crops after peas. They're kind of a cleansing crop, you could say. Same with oats. So this is one way that I was trying to incorporate peas into my mix. Grazing makes it a no-brainer in my world. The other thing I've been working with the last couple of years is buckwheat. Of course, the last couple of years has been very dry, obviously. So planting something in August, so August 1 is when I'll plant buckwheat after a small grain crop. My yields have not been great. The first year, I only harvested half the acres I planted because the other half wasn't worth harvesting. It was so short. So I somewhat thought it was a disaster. Not disaster, just not where I wanted it to be. But I harvested the other half of the acres. Those made 4 bushel an acre. I was hoping for 20, okay? So 4 bushel an acre, is it even really worth going after? Well, when I did the math, it was still worth it because now I have seed I can plant on other acres. This year, I harvested buckwheat, and it was 5 bushel an acre. Still disappointing, but The thing that keeps me going on this, last September, the first year I planted buckwheat, it was about this tall in places. I took a soil sample. That was the beginning of September. The following May, actually April 15th, I took another soil sample because I wanted to know how much fertility am I gaining with the buckwheat. Is it really doing what they say it can do as far as phosphorus release? And I don't have numbers to show you here today, but I tested 2 fields. In one field it was releasing 30 pounds of phosphorus per acre. The next field it released 60 pounds of phosphorus per acre. That sounds like a winner to me, so I'm going to keep doing this on a rotation on my farm. I compared it to a field that I did no buckwheat treatment, and some had raised 20 pounds per acre. So there was some natural release of phosphorus. So I felt like there was some credibility there. So I just was impressed. Even on a dry year, it still released phosphorus. So that was impressive to me. So it made sense. In the middle, there's a bee on the plant. It's a fuzzy picture, but you get the point. That field was just humming. If you're scared of bees, you should not plant buckwheat. They're going to be there. I've got a bee guy that brings me bees. His name is Dennis. He's awesome. He found out I was planting buckwheat. He says, "Can I bring over more hives?" I said, "Sure. Double them up." So he brought more hives. That obviously would only help me if we would have just had the rain to support everything, but I'm sure it still helped. So releasing phosphorus, and there is some weed control with that also, so I was pleased with that, even in a dry year. This is another example of buckwheat, planting it after I took a rye seed harvest crop. I just want to point out, this is all volunteer rye. You know, maybe I don't do a good job of harvesting, I don't know, but it was there and it grew, and that's cool. And I loved harvesting this. It's clean, it's not dusty. This was an example of 5-bushel buckwheat. You can see the little seed heads up there. So I'm going to go to corn next year into a field that has plenty of phosphorus, and we'll just see what the soil tests say. I'm using a soil health test or a Haney test, whatever you prefer, and just finding out what the soil is doing prior to the growing season. I don't really want to take it in the fall because there's a lot of time between now and when I plant that seed. I want to know what it's doing then. Okay, so profit. That's where we want to bring something home, right? So 40 pounds is what I applied with the planter, some liquid UAN this spring. I was planning to come back with a side dress or something like that. It turned dry. I was doing some tissue tests, soil tests, plant pH, bricks, using all these tools to try to put a picture together. Gee, it doesn't say that I need any nitrogen. Well, we'll just stick with 40 pounds, and now it's even drier than it was earlier. We'll just see what happens. So 120 bushel yield average on my farm this year. Is that great? For the area, it sounded like it was reasonable, and I did it on a third of the nitrogen, so that's cool. One of my test strips, I was doing some variety trials just to see where I wanted to land on a variety, and my high yield was 158. I thought that just gives an example what I could do on my particular farm this year with 40 pounds of N. So that was exciting. So you put the buckwheat rotation on top of that. My soil test did call for 30 pounds of phosphorus. I did not apply that on that farm. Maybe the buckwheat will bring another added boost to that yield. So that was exciting to me. So I'm using a diversity of roots to release fertility. I'm using several tools to try to pinpoint where I need to throw that money, that investment. And I have found the soil organic matter is really increasing where I'm using these diverse rotations. So and the pasture phase is going to be a big piece of that. I really feel like that's going to be my winner in the end, but that's a longer longer-term deal. So, yeah, so this is a little bit of corn on, I would say, an eroded side hill leading down to some bottom ground. You guys have no reference of what this should look like, but it should not look like that. So I was really pleased with what that side hill did this year in these conditions. So with that, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks to everybody. That was really good. So we have some time to have some discussion, and I'll start off with the question we get a lot from traditional corn soybean people who haven't tried any cover crops is in dry years, how do your systems perform? And when you first got into it and you didn't have the soil health benefits maybe, and how long did it take before your soil was built up so that maybe you did see some better response in dry years? Anybody want to volunteer?
I guess I'll start. We got started so long ago, I don't really remember, but I know we started with funding. That was the first part. I want to say at that time we were getting paid like $20 an acre in like 2005 or 2000. So we were getting paid substantially to do it. So my dad started doing it. And what really sold us that very first year we did it, we had a boatload of rain. I want to say like a 2.5-inch rain. And I got caught out in the field. My dad came to come pick me up. We were driving by, and we were looking down the road. We just with this field. It was spring, so we hadn't terminated yet, and the field was just green. And you're watching. Just pouring, absolutely pouring. And we kind of caught this break right when we were going past our fields, and you can see on the left side, you could see that there was water, but it was just in the field. And you looked on the right side, and it was just absolutely gutted. Just like 8-inch deep. Absolutely gutted. It was terrible. They were just one across from the road from each other, basically identical fields. No terraces, good slope on them. They got absolutely gutted. And that started everything. And then with the advancements of technology and people using it, the benefits have kind of just compounded from there.
I guess I don't. Coming from a dairy, I'll credit my dad. He was doing no-till and rye before it was a thing. It was a feed source, and he didn't have time to till. So we never really. I guess I haven't seen the other side of it, but I'll add on to a couple of your points that I feel that in a drought year like this, the rye crop, the timing can always be off a little and hurt, but also when you're farming for the soil, you're not throwing 250 pounds in out and trying to raise a crop that needs those rains. Lower expectations, of course, but you brought up the profit point of it. Sometimes I think that buffers my operation of I'm shooting for that 160, 170 bushel of corn. And that all plays a role in that a little bit. So, I guess I don't really have any. I've never felt that a rye crop. I've felt maybe I've grazed too long, or took a hay crop off. But you have to also lower your expectations and look at it from a profit per acre. If you're gonna no-till corn into rye that you took off for hay, and you're planning on 200 bushel of corn, that's just not going to happen. So I think sometimes we just have to have expectations of profit per acre still on those acres can compete with 250 bushel of corn as well, though. So
yeah, so my understanding is that the plant, in order to convert nitrogen, a synthetic form, or UAN or anhydrous, whatever, ammonium form, it takes moisture to do that. So my goal was to reduce the amount of commercial fertility so that in a dry year I am more resilient. It takes energy to convert, from ammonium to nitrate, or, so all those things take energy. How can I help the plant conserve moisture but not having to do all those processes? And so spoon feeding was one option, and that's what I was trying to do, but it ended up it didn't need more than what I had applied originally. Still blows me away how good it looked through the summer, even though it was dry. Once we got the rains, then it just took off, of course. But I hope that answers the question. Yeah.
So, if anybody in the audience has a question.
What's your decision different between planting rye and wheat? Does that cost the seed?
No, so for me, it had nothing to do with cost. I want to do something more. The benefits of rye on old bean crop going into corn is very minimal. We've kept it just for the erosion standpoint. There's also a seed pressure benefit from that. However, corn pesticides or herbicides are a lot better than the bean pesticides at the moment. But we wanted to flip just for the fact that I've always wanted to try it, and B, rye has that toxin that competes with corn. So when we're putting corn in, sometimes before the insurance guarantee, there's not enough growth time there for that rye to actually establish and do its job. So I'm hoping to, with the advent of technologies and stuff like that, be able and not terminate the wheat, put the corn down, and then let that wheat take off a little bit better, and then come in and kill it after, is kind of the plan. I'm trying to get more growth out of it. Although we do a lot of cattle side, we push the bushels very, very, very hard on our farm. Almost hit 100 bushel soybeans one year in my lifetime. I would love in the next 5 to 10 years to hit 100 bushel soybeans. The soybean side in my area, I think, is way more beneficial than anything else. Still looking to hit 300 bushel corn, but we're 250 averages. So we push the bushels really hard. And one way of doing that with the corn is not going to, in my opinion, probably won't be with the rye. But by upping our organic matter we're getting out of it is one of the ways that we're able to push that so hard.
To your wheat and rye question, if it's going to be grazed or hayed, I always go rye. If there's a chance we're going to seed, the marketability of wheat is by far and away easier than rye, unless you have local farmers that want to buy rye and stuff like that. But it's rye. There is not really a commercial market in eastern Nebraska, so that makes a lot of our decisions on what we're doing.
I don't have much to add. I haven't planted wheat for quite a while. Because I'm raising rye for seed, I've just decided not to have wheat in my rotation. But when I did plant wheat as a cover, I just love the way it melted down in the spring. And this was following it with soybeans, and it's just amazing how that melts into the soil during the summer. So it provided benefits to the soybeans.
Well, one thing I do want to add, if you're wanting to start with it, from my experience, the easiest way to start is after your corn, go plant rye for your beans. There's very few ways you can screw that up. I mean, if you want to try something, that's where to try it. Try it for your soybeans. Don't try it for your corn. You can tie up a lot of nutrients on the corn side, but rye and beans work very well together.
Other questions? I'll point out for the people who are streaming, Jim has my cell phone number up on the screen. You can text me questions if you have it, and we'll get it to the guys here.
You said you got an air seeder. What are you guys running for drills then?
Just 15-foot Great Plains no-till.
Yeah, 750 John Deere.
Any other questions?
You all have livestock, and I'm getting old and lazy. I don't have livestock anymore. But what would be the benefit to me versus you guys with livestock?
I think it's a great opportunity for you to work with somebody younger that can bring livestock onto your farm for a short period of time.
I would agree with that. I will say, though, one of my better fields, that one slide had the rye and the buckwheat. That's not seen livestock. It's in an area that I cannot bring livestock as a housing area. And so even though I don't have livestock there, it is still improving in soil health. I'm raising organic matter, but it's not as fast as if you would have livestock on the acre. And I'm totally with him on that point. I like to partner with my neighbors. I think that we've lost community, and it's not always easy, but golly, I want to have good neighbors when I'm working out there.
I think there is a need for more, especially winter grazing acres. I see a lot of things online that there are a lot of northern cattle coming down to Nebraska on corn stalks and stuff like that. So I know there are people looking for that probably pay quite well too.
And I would mention also, I've had experience where I would say, abused a small area with cattle, and I did not see a drawback on yield the next year because it's such surface, if you can call it compaction, it's not deeper. So I've just not seen a yield drag because of my livestock operations.
I've probably got a more unique perspective than them guys. We run a lot of cow-calf, but the cover crop for me in our operation is a backup on the livestock, but a primary for the crops. So we didn't get into cover cropping for the cattle side. We got into it for the crop side. We got into it for the organic matter, the erosion control, and the added benefits on that side. It's pretty instrumental. I got a couple neighbors that do the exact same thing we do, except for no cover crop, and they do the anhydrous route. Otherwise, everything else the same. RTK, great operators, and watching this last year, their crops just torched. I mean, absolutely torched. Ours held. We did not sow from like April 9th or something like that. We didn't get any moisture until July 6th or something like that. We had 0 inches of rain. We had a few dews or sprit showers, but nothing to actually get the ground moisture. And their cornfields actually didn't make it that far. We made it to July 6th, and then we got like 12 inches in July, and then it shut off again for us. But yeah, so we're able to hold more water than they are. And then, we're able to hold more water. We keep the soil where it's supposed to be. We got a couple farms we put in basins that run the length of our neighbor's field. And every year we go in with the scraper and we grab all their soil that washed into our basin and put it on our field. So, so we've eliminated a lot of issues. Another thing is we've started taking out terraces instead of putting them in. With the way commercial farming is in cover crop, I can get away with not needing terraces anymore. So we got some fields that probably need terraces. I've been audited by the Lower Platte South. You get randomly selected and they pick a field, and we've had fields that probably should have had terraces that passed because of the way we farm.
I would agree with that. I've started taking terraces out also. Some of them were older, obviously, so they would have either needed to be updated, but it was not needed anymore. It soaks the water in. Yeah. I cringe every time I see water going off the field. So it's how can I keep that from happening? How can I hold it? So we're getting better infiltration now.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's where we really, as farmers, need to focus also. Just get the rain to soak in, because that's the actual issue. It's not, did I have a terrace there to direct it off.
Yeah, those are great points, and something that we try to emphasize is if you're patient enough and you get into it, the benefits will become apparent over time. And I see how all of you have seen that. That's what do you guys think? Over time, how long did it take before you started seeing?
In a wet year, it can be that year. You know, with erosion control. Erosion control is all about how much moisture you're getting. There's one more, options. So why would we do it? So options. So I've actually I got a couple guys that till just the crap out of their fields, you know, and they raise good corn. But they've actually started buying cover crops from me because of the drought. They're worried what they're going to do. So options. There's a lot of options with cover crops. But back to time. As far as time, erosion can be immediate. If if it's been dry, if we get a 2 or 3 inch rain, a big rain, guys that have cover crops ain't going to be worried. Guys without them are going to be just petrified of what happens. The organic matter, it's taken us 10 years, 5 to 10 years to move a point. So it can take a long time there. Weed control is immediate. As soon as we pull into a field, with rye, you plant your cover crop, you come in and spray it. You'll find that the only places you have weeds is where the cover crop didn't come up. I had one of my relatives, I got him to do an 80, try it, and he goes, yeah, all the rest of our fields we went and sprayed, there were weeds everywhere in them, but that one didn't have any, So, yeah, that's kind of about what my timeline looks like.
Yeah, we need to use cover crops aggressively as something to keep the weeds back. It's not just it's not just about erosion. That's a fantastic thing because I don't move the dirt I used to because it holds it. But we can use them as a tool to prevent some weed pressure. Absolutely.
I don't know who I've heard it from, but I've heard it a few times that in adopting cover crop program, you have to give it at least 3 years to make your decision. 1 year you catch something wrong, but that's I think kind of the industry idea is at least give it 3 years of consistent.
On the timing thing, I think, yeah, absolutely. First year you see benefits because the rain didn't wash gullies down the hill. But to get actual soil aggregation, that's going to take a little longer. And that's what we're talking about with actually getting it to soak in. The 3 years is where I start to see a clay knob turn into, there's some cottage cheese looking surface changes happening. So
I had a farmer I knew, and in 1 year he went from anhydrous to UAN, went from tillage to no-till, drilled the cover crop, changed all of his management, and it was that dang rye that knocked his yield. Kind of, he blamed the rye, but he did a 100% shift. And when you feed your ground the same way for 50 years and you shift 1 year, it's not going to happen like that. I almost feel some of it becomes addicted to your management, and when you change it on something like that, it's going to take a while.
My feeling is the biology isn't prepared for it. The communities of biology, from my understanding, is not there yet to support a change like that.
Yeah, and with us trying to get some pasture on farm ground, I know the recommendation is to go 2 years of cover crop to get your biology built before you even try. You take orchard grass out in a cornfield, it's not gonna go well year one. So there's something more going on there that I don't know what's going on though.
Bingo, right.
And some of you, the folks that are older, you guys would really appreciate this, but the wildlife that we see is outstanding. We used to have pheasants all over the state. They're not around anymore, and I'm starting to see them come back.
Quail in the area.
Yeah, the quail have gone outrageous. I always wanted to go pheasant quail hunting. I did it when I was a little kid. I'm not that old, but the last 3 or 4 years, I go religiously now. I thoroughly enjoy it. So the wildlife coming back, you get deer, turkey, quail are the 3 big ones I see the most.
I actually saw 5 pheasants this year. I planted Milo. I know that's a dirty word to some. I realize that. Just bear with me. But 5 pheasants, 2 3 hens and 2 roosters at the end of a milo field. When did, it's been a long time since I've seen that. That happened this year.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
We've got one question that came in, then we probably need to keep moving, but kind of touched on it already, but what's the average amount of external inputs, pounds of N per acre to reach yield goal, and how much has that changed over the years, and are you using APH to determine your yield goal? Kind of a 3-part question.
You want to start?
I don't worry about APH. That's not where I focus my time. I focus my time on profit, and insurance comes second. Not to discount insurance, that's an important part of my operation, but I'm focusing on soil health, number one. And you talked about like units of N. I shared earlier, 40 pounds for 120 bushel corn. So that is a process of weaning myself off of N. So this has not been I'm just going to decide to cut it to a third. That was not the intent, and that's not how you should do it either. It has to be a weaning process with nitrogen. So this is year 3 of me weaning from 3/4 to a half rate to now a third. But it's also using tools to verify and throughout the season that you're on track. So this isn't a blind, I'm going to cut it and we're going to see results, hopefully. That's no way to run a business. So.
I'm a little more infant in where you are I'm probably at that 0.8 nitrogen to yield goal in my area. South of here, hour and a half, we're shooting for, 160, APHs are getting up to 180 now, but shooting for 160 with that 130 pounds in area and plan to do less. And I will say, there is some added fertility from the cattle, both in grazing, but also we have a lot of composted manure that probably doesn't have a big N credit, but the biology and the phosphorus credit's probably pretty extreme on that we try to cover some acres with.
Yeah, I could spend a lot of time on this. I wish I would have, on my slide, the original slide, due to time I'd cut it in half, but I have this very extensive Excel sheet. We track all of our inputs, so field by field, tracking it. Something I've not personally done a very good job of is variable rating my nitrogen. That is something we plan to execute very hard this year. But keeping track on the inside, keeping track of our conversion rate has been big for us. Multiple applications of N is very important. So especially with these drought years, we've saved, depending on how, on average, somewhere between 60 to 80 pounds of N we didn't put on because we put a base rate on early. And then we hope to variable rate the rest of it on later. You get to June and July and you realize there's no moisture out there, or you're not going to hit the yield goals. You can cut that back or put more on. We've had a couple years where instead of when we come to VRT, we decide, we're going to have a great year. We're going to have 250, 275 bushel corn. So you can go out there and you can go put that on, dry spread it essentially. So doing multiple applications of N is a big one. So not just putting it down with anhydrous. I know a lot of guys think, it's the cheapest form, but when you don't have to put 60 pounds down, that becomes pretty cheap as well.
And different forms of nitrogen also, is my understanding, can be really beneficial.
And I think it's neat that you guys probably aren't that far away, that you can put on 40 pounds and be a profitable farm, and you can shoot for 300 bushel corn and be a profitable farm. And I think that's kind of an overarching theme that it works.
And I really appreciate that you're just knocking it out of the park on yield. I would like to be somewhere closer to there, but baby steps.
I think that was neat to see from somebody kind of in the middle that two extremes can still accomplish the same goals of their operation.
I think the biggest success we've had on our farm is individualizing. So we try to micro our farm down. So we used to field farm by farm. Now we farm by section, and we're hoping to get it to farm by acre. And through that process, as we've dropped some farms, we farmed my old man wasn't great at, keeping track of the profitability, but keeping track of stuff by farm and how profitable your farm is. Yeah, by field and then by acre. The further down the line you can get, you'll find what sections need to change. We've consolidated some fields. We've split them in half. We've taken some farms that, were only getting us 180, bushel corn, and we decided it wasn't worth it. So now that's into hay ground. Just understanding where your profitability is on your farm makes a big, big difference on the profitability of the end of the year.
Well, I wish we could do this all day, but we probably ought to keep moving. So let's give these guys a hand. I think this is really good. So we have our sponsor here, Tyler Williams. We'll give him a few minutes to tell us what he's up to, and then we'll take a break.
A couple minutes because I've recognized pretty much all of you in the room. So we've met at some point in time. We started this a few years ago, so it's good to see familiar faces back. But I'm an agronomist within Bayer. I work with our sustainable agronomy team. I kind of serve the Central Plains region, and Foreground is the name of the platform that we have. That it's like a free place for farmers to go to kind of see everything that we're doing within Bayer as far as agronomy services, and then we have revenue programs. Those types of things are kind of all built into that Foreground platform. So that's kind of the website. You can check it out and see what you think. But really our role is to work with farmers that sign up for programs with us, or our sales folks kind of out working with farmers on the ground. And anything related to cover crops, no-till, sustainable ag, all the stuff that we talked about today, my passion for weather and resiliency and all of that is all tied into it. So, really I kind of work with a lot of people that work with farmers. So, kind of that trickle down there. But even within our company, we can clearly see the shift of all the things that you all had mentioned and talked about, right? I think it's no secret there's a lot going on in this space, and even industries, seeing that, or else we wouldn't be here. So anyway, thanks John for keeping this going and the invite. It's good to be back, but I'll let everyone grab a restroom and some coffee.